The Epstein-shaped hole that Donald Trump's been digging for himself, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. With him now not just getting heat from MAGA, from pundits or politicians, but also from Epstein's victims. With now a lot of it coming from the direction of Virginia Giuffre, the woman who alleged that Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her from Mar-a-Lago back when she was a 16-year-old spa attendant there. And while obviously, she can't speak for herself since she tragically took her own life in April at the age of 41, her brothers, Sky and Danny, they said that they felt compelled to make a statement after what Trump's been saying this week. First, in regard to Epstein poaching Giuffre from Mar-a-Lago.
He stole her.
And second, in regard to whether he would pardon Maxwell.
I'm allowed to do it, but it's something I have not thought about.
And so in their statement, you had Giuffre's brothers and their wives making their position clear, saying the government and the president should never consider giving Ghislaine Maxwell any leniency. Ghislaine Maxwell is a monster who deserves to rot in prison for the rest of her life for the extraordinary violence and abuse she put not just our sister Virginia through, but many other survivors who may number in the thousands. And saying that she's a predator who thought only of herself, saying she destroyed the lives of girls and young women without conscience, saying Virginia always said that Ghislaine Maxwell was vicious and could often be more cruel than Epstein, and then finishing, she must remain in prison. Anything less would go down in history as being one of the highest travesties of justice. Right, but then also they took aim straight at Donald Trump, saying it was shocking to hear President Trump invoke our sister and say that he was aware that Virginia had been stolen from Mar-a-Lago. It makes us ask if he was aware of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal actions, especially given his statement 2 years later that his good friend Jeffrey likes women on the younger side, no doubt about it. We in the public are asking for answers. Survivors deserve this. Right, and then in response to that, you had White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defending Trump, saying he did not bring Giuffre up, a reporter did. With her then adding the fact remains that President Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club for being a creep to his female employees. With then a senior administration official telling NBC News that no leniency is being given or discussed, and adding, the president himself has said that clemency for Maxwell is not something he is even thinking about at this time. But of course, that sort of response from Trump and his officials, it leaves open the possibility that he might later decide to pardon Maxwell. Right? And so you have many saying, why will he not just commit to leaving her in prison? Right? If someone asks you, hey, are you going to shoot that baby? You wouldn't say, well, I have this gun and I could. But it seems like any person that's not going to maybe shoot the baby would be like, that's a fucking insane question. Of course I'm not. It shouldn't be something you have to think about or say, well, I could. Meanwhile, there's also been growing scrutiny directed toward the fact that the person picked to question Maxwell last week was Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanch, a man who was literally Trump's personal defense lawyer before taking his current job, a man whose law firm reportedly received $9.2 million from the Save America PAC in 2023 and 2024 to defend Trump in the hush money trial and other cases. A man who, when asked during his confirmation hearing if he would have a continuing duty of loyalty and confidentiality to his former client even after becoming Deputy Attorney General, replied yes. Now he's also a man whose former colleague from when he was a federal prosecutor told the Washington Post that it's completely inappropriate and wrong for Blanch to be involved in the Maxwell case, saying that if a top Washington official had injected himself into a case Blanch handled as a prosecutor, he would have gone running to Main Justice, referring to the DOJ's DC headquarters. Right, and then adding, that just shows how completely far gone he is as an actual prosecutor. He's really more akin to a political player at this point. Now, also notably with this, when the Post asked the DOJ whether Blanch consulted a government ethics official before talking to Maxwell, they didn't respond directly, but you did have a spokesperson say, any suggestion that Todd Blanch has acted unethically while serving as Deputy Attorney General is baseless and defamatory. This gossip column relies on innuendo and the word of an agenda-driven political hack to push a false narrative. This is not a serious article. But Giuffre's family, they addressed this point in their statement as well, writing, if our sister could speak today, she would be most angered by the fact that the government is listening to a known perjurer, a woman who repeatedly lied under oath and will continue to do so as long as it benefits her position. Right? And then all of this is, we got to know, this is not the first time that victims or their families have spoken out against Trump recently. Or you've had things like 4 of Epstein's victims giving NBC their reactions to that DOJ memo earlier this month, saying that there was no client list and nobody else would be prosecuted. You had Danielle Bensky, who said her heart sank at the news, adding, you never really heal, and with what's happening now, it feels like we're being erased. All the brave women who came forward, all the work that we did to tell the world what happened to us, it's all being erased. But then another woman who chose to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation, saying the memo terrified her and explaining, in the past, I was out there talking about what happened, and now I don't want my name out there in connection with anything to do with Epstein because I'm afraid of what they could do to me and my family. And saying, I am not surprised Trump is now saying we should stop talking about Epstein. These people are trying to protect themselves. Right? And that is, you had Teresa Helms saying, when a person's abusers are repeatedly flashed in view at any given moment, and especially when promises of justice and promises of structures of power finally being held to account to then essentially have the door shut in your face and no longer open for business, then what? And then you had the 4th woman, Alicia Arden, saying she actually supports Trump, but still added. Pam Bondi was saying back in February there was a list, and then she said the list was on her desk, and now there is no list. She doesn't want something to come out, and I don't understand why. Maybe the list is more horrifying than we think. Right, then also, this week, we saw the lawyer for several of Epstein's victims telling CBS,
every single day they have always said, The information needs to get out. The president, as I have said before, could enter an executive order today, sign an executive order demanding the release of these documents. Sign that executive order today. I dare you to do so.
And that intervention, it's major because the excuse that congressional Republicans in the White House have given for not releasing the Epstein files is that they're actually protecting the victims' identifying information. But as this attorney speaking on behalf of those victims themselves put it, the argument is bogus.
We absolutely can go through and redact the names of the minor victims. That is a simple task that can be done on a base level, or on videotapes that they have. They can blur the victims' faces if they're minors.
Now, in lieu of those files, you have the White House instead asking the courts to release the transcripts from the grand juries that indicted Epstein and Maxwell, with one judge in Florida rejecting that request last week and the other in New York still considering it. But also, this week, we've learned that even if those transcripts come out, they only contain testimony from 2 people. And that, according to a court filing from the DOJ, which also added that those people aren't even victims. They're an FBI agent and an NYPD detective, which, it's not unusual for a grand jury, but it does cast doubt on the prospects that these transcripts would actually satisfy the public's desire for full transparency. And so with now yet another week of this seemingly nonstop Trump-Epstein scandal behind us, it just doesn't look like people are going to give up demanding the truth anytime soon, and people are looking to see what is Trump going to do.